Hello YouTube, what's up? It's Rocket here, and this is part 1 of my MIDI video series in my Traceback HackTheBox write-up. In this video, I cover the initial enumeration of the host, followed by some passive recon, and then eventually showing you how I ended up discovering the back door. So to start off, I like to go run an nmap scan, so you can run sudo nmap-p- to enumerate all TCP ports, and OA to output all formats. I created a directory called nmap, and I like to call this TCP. The host is traceback.htb, and I've already ran this command, so I'll show you the output right here. And it looks like we have an SSH port open and a service running HTTP. So now we've seen that, the next step I like to do is enumerate the service version and run default scripts against it. So to do that, we can just run it. Sudo nmap-p, specify specific ports this time instead of all of them. And we'll go port 22 and 80. And this time run all default scripts with the -sc flag and enumerate all versions with the -sv flag. OA, again, to output all formats. Nmap, and we'll just call it TCP full version. And again, on traceback.htb. I've also already ran this, so we can take a look here. So Traceback is running an Ubuntu server. We can see that from nmap's service version on port 22, but more importantly, it is also running an Apache web server. So let's go visit that with our web browser. And we can see that an attacker has already hacked this site, and he left the back door for all the net, and his user handle is xh4h. So whenever I see something like this, I always like to check the source code to check for any HTML comments that someone might have left behind. So you can go Control-U in Firefox, and looking down here, we can see that he left behind some of the best web shells that you might need. So that's interesting. When you see a blank page like this that is empty, there is probably going to be some sort of web content that you can discover. So you can go and try to brute force the web content. I've tried that and it didn't work. So this left me with the message that was left, and what I had to do is find every small detail in Word here. So in this case, he says, oh, I left behind a back door, and find the author. So at this point, this is where the passive reconnaissance takes in place. And I had to do a bit of Google searching on this author right here. So moving to web browser, doing some passive recon, we can look for xh4h web shells. And it looks like this author might have some web shells for us. So here's his repository with some of the best web shells that you might need. This looks very promising because it does match the HTML comment that we've seen earlier. Next thing I like to do is just go clone it. And going back here, I like to make a directory called web, where I put all my web-related work. Go in it and clone the web shells directory. Once that's done, we can go in it and check the contents. But again, like I was saying before, we do need to go brute force the content to see which web shell the author might have left behind. You can go check them manually, but in my opinion, that's pretty tedious. So what I like to do is just dump all these names to a word list and then run that through a tool called GoBuster, which will, again, brute force content. So let's dump everything in this directory to, we'll call it x h4h webshells.txt. And now we'll run GoBuster. So GoBuster dir to run it in directory mode will pass the x84h webshells word list, and the URL will be, again, traceback.htb. And here I like to output to a file, because this way, if let's say I had a huge word list and I got multiple hits, then I can manually trace and keep track of which web paths I've already enumerated, which ones I've already checked. So I don't have to go back and repeat the same work twice. So we'll just call it x4h webshells.out. Maybe call it GoBuster because we ran with GoBuster. And it looks like we have a hit. So let's go visit that. Copy this. Go back to Firefox. And it looks like we have a login page. So whenever I see a login page, the first credentials that I always like to use are admin and admin, just because they are the default credentials that a lot of vendors and perhaps developers like to use. And it only takes 2 seconds to run. So let's try that out. Admin, admin. Okay, there we go. So it looks like admin, admin were the default credentials, and now we can see some sort of web panel where basically we are now the admin user and we can do whatever we want here. If they did not use admin, admin as the credentials, what you could do is go into the web shells directory and take a look at that PHP file. In this case, it looks like the author did not modify them. So the username was admin and the auth pass was admin. Again, he could have probably changed them, and if he did, you could still try to brute force some known username. Admin is a quite popular one that has higher privileges, and just run a word list to try to brute force the password. Alternatively, you can also go and try to reverse engineer this base64 encoded payload and try to understand the application further there. You might find some more details. But that wraps up part 1 of this video, and I will see you in part 2.